Don't even do it. Don't even do it. Chat. I hate Donald Trump. I hate Donald Trump so much. Hassan was right the whole time. Asmongold was wrong. I hate Donald Trump. I hate him so much.
Yo.
I lost $500,000 yesterday.
Paste.
I lost $500,000. Like, I really hate Donald Trump. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Only $500,000. I know.
Is there money to be made by buying options and short selling? How does it work? If you're ever thinking, wow, the market is going to move in a very obvious direction, therefore I can make money off of the movements, remember there's an underlying price to derivative markets, meaning that if you think it's very obvious that the market is going to move in a certain direction, then other people are going to think that it's obvious that the market is going to move in a certain direction, and all those other people are going to be pricing the underlying securities that the derivatives are based off of appropriately. So what does that mean? When you're buying puts and calls, you're buying the right to buy or sell a given security at a given price. There's somebody else that's ensuring that's guaranteeing that put and call. Well, if the market is very obviously going to go down and somebody has 100 shares of a given stock and they're willing to sell you options on it, the options, the fee that you pay to buy that is going to be priced accordingly. So the short answer is, well, that was, I guess, the medium answer. The short answer is no, there is no money to be made if you think the market is going down, because the rest of the market knows that the market is going down. And all of these derivative markets are going to be pricing that in accordingly. Yeah, sorry, if that made sense.
Who can tell me anything about Mr. Pierce?
He uses oil heaters at his...
Why do you keep saying it? How can people be so confident predicting a recession? Like, you can be extremely pessimistic on Q1 numbers, but that's about it. And when you're dealing with a recession from the supply side, even if there are obvious demand effects, you likely have to approach Q1 from a different angle than you're used to. People are predicting a recession because this is like a country intentionally trying to destroy their fucking economy, and it seems like they're going through with it. That's why people are predicting a recession.
His house in New...
All right. Who can tell me anything about Mr. Pierce?
He uses oil heaters at his house in New Hampshire.
That answer was either very sarcastic or very stupid. Either way, I'm whacking you with my clipboard. Brace yourself.
Wait, he's hypoxic with a clear chest x-ray, which can be a sign of carbon monoxide poisoning. I learned that watching House.
You weigh on that Buffett clip about large trade deficits can be bad long term. Is it valid? That was like a 30-year-old thing, and there can be ways in which deficits can be bad in the long term, but that was a different world economic. Anytime somebody is throwing at you, somebody talking about the economy from 20 or 30 years ago, you can probably just assume the exact opposite of whatever argument they're trying to make, and you'll be more correct, because things that happened it's a different economic environment that you're living in.
Clear chest x-ray, which can be a sign of carbon monoxide poisoning. I learned that watching
Destiny has the worst takes on options. What did I just say that was incorrect? Destiny, stop saying that, LOL. You could buy puts on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, and they were priced with a high premium, and they went for 500 to 800%. I don't know why you say this. If they were priced that way, then it's because people didn't know 100% if the market was going to go up or down, and they're priced accordingly. Never mind. Actually, I changed what I'm saying. Never mind. Tourniquet is actually 100% correct. If you have a really strong idea that the market is going to move in some direction, it's actually free money. You're guaranteed, like, you're not going to have to pay a premium for it. You should just buy as much of these derivative markets you can, and you're just guaranteed to make a fuck ton of money. Nobody's pricing anything accordingly. You're correct. Your knowledge is right, and it's free money, basically. You should probably just borrow as much as you can to buy these puts or calls, okay? Destiny, you just said the short answer is no, there is no money to be made on puts and calls, because that's true. The short answer is, let me give you the medium short answer. The medium short answer is, as a retail investor, there is no money to be made on puts or calls. That is correct. You're gambling. You're almost always gambling. You're always gambling as a retail investor. Now, if you're using derivative markets as some kind of like hedge against a current portfolio in order to do like risk management or whatever, then you're way more sophisticated than anything that I'm fucking talking about at all anyway. But no, as a retail investor, all of your, what you think, unless you've got you think you have some special insight into the market, all of these derivative markets are going to be priced accordingly.
House.
House is a genius.
That's it. I'm whacking both of you.
Ow.
Look,
You spent months saying the tariffs would destroy our economy. Why were you not shorting the market then? Because one, I would have to buy those options contracts for a long time, okay, which would have fees that are part of them. Two, I don't know 100%. I'm making a political prediction. I'm not making a financial prediction, right? So three, they might tariff it, but who knows when those tariffs will actually come. And there's a whole bunch like this. Like, I'm talking politics here. I'm not making financial predictions. Oh, and then also, I didn't even know, even though I assumed that the tariffs were coming, I didn't know they'd be this significant either. The level, the percentage of the tariffs matters as well. Like, Zip, I got your screenshot. I'll watch it in a minute.
Yes.
Or I'll read it in a minute.
that's it. I'm whacking both of you.
Ow.
Look, I know you all curl up on your futons at night, dreaming of cracking a real-life medical mystery so that some doctor/supermodel will want to touch your eruption button. But here's the bad news. This isn't a TV show. There aren't any cameras over here. Real medical mysteries don't happen every week, and doctors damn sure don't look like models. They look like wrecks. What?
Wow.
Chin up, you ugly bastard. So, if you want to solve a real mystery, go ahead and figure out who's taking my New York Times every Sunday. Or, better yet, how about why anybody on the planet actually thinks Dane Cook is funny? As far as Mr. Pierce goes, he has your run-of-the-mill.
You would pay a premium for the theta, time till expiration, but who cares? Trump literally gave us a date for it, LOL. Okay, tourniquet. Do you think that I have more insight into the totality of the financial and political situation of international markets than people that do it full time? You trust my political analysis that much? I'm flattered. Thank you. I don't know why you're not a tier 5 subscriber if I'm giving you information that's more valuable than every other financial analyst on the planet. But for me personally, Destiny, it kind of sounds like you're saying you can't win at a casino. You can, but on average you won't. Calls and puts are gambling. All stocks are gambling if you're not diversifying and doing boring, lame shit.
Pulmonary.
Okay, I don't... Okay, somebody said Joanna's article had something else in it. To sell abundance as a political program instead of a strange impromptu white paper. Okay, we already read this, didn't we? When you read this part of the introduction, you said you'd be surprised if Ezra Klein blamed DEI. If you thought that this section of the book had inflicted enough damage, you were wrong. Next, the authors take aim at the Chips and Science Act. When I started this section, I was genuinely intrigued. How are these two going to take on, to take one of the greatest achievements of the last term and use it as evidence of government inefficiency? Even if I were to assume that the others were co-opted by tech, semiconductors are good. No, no. Over 2 pages are spent complaining about the notice of funding opportunity for the CHIPS Act, with the authors asserting that America is falling behind because of requirements related to gender and racial equality and efforts to protect the environment. It is then made clear that this is something Taiwan would never care about, but do Taiwanese semiconductors really know how to expand the role of women in the construction industry? The point doesn't land with me because I know that $32 billion in grants have been awarded under the $33 billion CHIPS Act funding. It doesn't land because I know as a result of this policy, the top 5 semiconductors in the world are now operating in the U.S., and them early testing suggests that American semiconductor skills are outperforming the ones in Taiwan. I would have to read. I would have to read the underlying passages of the book and everything here, I guess, to know what she's referring to here. Because I, like I said, I haven't read the book, but yeah, that's the point. You should read the article. I already don't trust the article, though, based on what I read in the intro. So I would have to have the underlying passages of the book to assess the validity of the article. And every single thing I've heard them say in every single interview seems to betray the way the article is representing the book. So so I would need the underlying passages from the book to verify. But I don't actually care that much, so it's not worth my time. I would rather just not waste my time like reading. I think that it's not worth the time. Also, this third part here doesn't logically follow the second part. This point doesn't land with me because I know that $32 billion in grants have been awarded under the $33 billion CHIPS Act funding. It doesn't land because I know as a result of this policy, the top 5 semiconductor companies in the world are now operating in the United States, and that early testing suggests that American semiconductor facilities are outperforming the ones in Taiwan. We could be doing well despite this policy, not necessarily because of it. This point doesn't even logically follow that one, so but okay. Next paragraph has more. For the idea that the government stood in the way of industry progress, when it is well documented that the government worked meticulously with individual semiconductor companies to get their grant applications to a yes is ludicrous. This whole endeavor was nowhere close to being killed by regulation. If anything, the CHIPS Act is a perfect example of how America does get to a point of abundance. From my cursory investigation, I cannot find complaints from the semiconductor companies about the NOFO process. I can't ever find the same complaints in this report from Project 2025. The abundance crowd wants to suggest that regulation risked the semiconductor industry in order to further demonize regulation. So I just don't care. I'm sorry. It's too much for me. I don't care. Okay. I went to a hands-off protest yesterday, and it was a colossal waste of time from our good subreddit Hassan Piker. Can you at least articulate why the last guy was wrong? Sounds correct to me. What, the investor guy? I don't. The problem is that if you think that you can have some piece of knowledge that would allow you to reliably and consistently outperform any sort of like market where other investors are trading, then there's so much fundamental stuff that I'd have to rewrite, and I don't care. If you want to believe it, then believe it and go broke and then come back after you've learned in a year. But I don't care to do fundamental market teaching right now. I'm good. So I went to a local protest yesterday just to see how people around me are feeling about the current political situation. I've known for a long time that I disagree with liberals on a lot of issues, but wow, this experience was pathetic. To be clear, the hands-off protest was the one about the Donald Trump stuff. To be clear, I completely agree with the demands of the hands-off protests on the domestic front, protecting social security, Medicare, women's rights to choose, etc. However, there was not a single mention of Palestine anywhere. I made a sign that said Free Palestine, and I was the only person with a Palestine sign. I got a lot of nasty looks from people. Someone even whispered Free Israel to me in passing. However, there were a lot of pro-Ukraine signs everywhere. I guess they do care about imperialism. Okay. There were a lot of signs praising Cory Booker, which is baffling to me. His speech accomplished nothing. Why are we praising him? Someone had a sign implying that Trump is controlled by Putin, but then Putin had hammer and sickle symbols surrounding him because, as we all know, Putin equals bad and communism equals bad. Therefore, Putin equals communism. However, the main issue I had with this protest, and the reason why I say it was a waste of time, is because everyone there felt so confident that they were doing something when they were doing absolutely nothing. Everyone consistently expressed this proud attitude that they were fighting against tyranny and fascism. This is what democracy looks like. A bunch of people came together, made signs, stood on the side of the road, listened to people honk as they drove by, got some middle fingers from Trump supporters. The cops patiently watched the protest, unfazed, and then everyone went home. I just don't understand the point. Wow, nice. As opposed to you guys that do what? Boston. You don't energize the movement by reading a checklist. Our speaker at City Hall today seemed to embody everything currently wrong with the Democratic movement. You have the ear of tens of thousands of people. Don't waste that by emotionlessly reading a checklist of bad things the opposition has done. I feel like none of the speakers today actually cared about productively capturing and directing the momentum of the protest. They had no energy. There was no unique idea or concise theme that they were trying to rally the people around. Just 10 minutes each of listing things Trump did and trying to paint themselves in a good light. I do agree. We need to rebuild. Like positive idea, but just nobody cares to talk about any positive ideas. It's just like negativity and dumb policies that don't work. Okay, if Destiny is at least consistent in saying stocks are just as much gambling as options, then that's fine. Oh no, I think that a retail investor can beat the stock market as long as he picks things that he knows a lot of information about, like if he's reading Twitter every single day. I just don't think options are good. What the fuck kind of retarded fucking take is that? When have you ever heard me say anything like that? Buying anything outside of a fund for an individual is basically gambling on the stock market. The only difference is with derivative markets, you can leverage and you can lose everything because sometimes you don't even own the underlying security based. So you can lose everything. And you can amplify your losses even more based. If Ezra Klein does, why not full-throated support his message like the mega influencers did for Trump? I do. I largely do support everything Ezra Klein says. I think we're pretty close in it. But my messaging isn't sexy. Nobody cares about that. Expand marginal tax rates. Like, nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear Sam Cedar go 90% marginal income tax. Okay, that's never happening. That's stupid. What a waste of time. Bump your capital gains taxes. No, wealth tax on all the, there should be no billionaire. Okay, well, all right, I guess. Just curious, isn't technically ETFs gambling? What guarantee do you have that they will go up over time? Broad market investments, ideally, what you're quote unquote gambling on there is that society will continue and that capitalists will want to continue to make money. Those are two pretty safe bets, generally. Actually, I'm giving you a 7-day well actually ban. You're fucking retarded. Destiny, if you still keep diversification in mind, you can pick stocks and it's not necessarily gambling. There's not much difference in picking random 500 stocks versus buying S&P 500 ETF. That's true, but one, not everybody has the money to diversify like that and buy 500 different stocks. Two, not everybody has the wherewithal to know what a proper diversification looks like. You could buy 100 different stocks and they could all be in the same industry. Three, rope. This pirate got a defective parrot. What is this? Do you think you need secret/extra info to identify and profit from securities that are mispriced? Do you think the entire market is 100% efficient? More or less, I think it's fairly efficient, yes. More than any individual can identify, at least in the long term. You might get lucky every now and then.
One movie.
Oof. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Destiny, wrong. You're right, I am wrong. Go beat the market, Rufo. Come back when you're a trillionaire and tier 5 sub to me. Breaking. In an effort to calm markets, Trump at the White House is spreading the word to whoever will listen that dozens of countries are calling in and are willing to cut deals on trade. Story developing. What? I thought he just said he wasn't going to. Actually, wait, let me qualify. I am wrong. In that insider trading is a way to consistently beat the market. So as a retail investor, if you have inside information, you would be able to consistently beat the market. Can you pull me in about options? I don't even know. Why don't you? I don't even know what your name is on Discord. Hello? Why is my keyboard fucked? Oh, God. The fuck? Refresh?
Is there anything?
The truth about my anti-vax debate. Hassan debunks his own stock thing.
Price increases, massive inflation is going to lead to negative real wage growth. It is going to diminish purchasing power. People are going to start trying to save as much money as possible or not be able to purchase things that they would normally purchase. They're going to start consuming less. And when they start consuming less, companies are going to make less money. When companies make less money, they're going to engage in layoffs. And this downward trend, this downward spiral will repeat itself in perpetuity. The more people get laid off, the less purchasing power the American labor force has overall, which would lead to a recession and then a depression.
Does the voltage or current kill? Both. We're not doing this argument again. Stop.
A great one. The greatest depression of all time. Believe it, folks. Believe me.
Why did I watch this? I don't care about this. Okay.
Price increases, massive.
Thing I could say. Is there anything I could say today that would change your mind?
I'm just asking your opinion.
I'm asking you a question.
Probably not, because I actually read and study.
I would like to give you my knowledge, my experience, and what I've seen in the hospital system. But if you're telling me right now, no matter what I say, you're not going to change your mind, is there any value to that? I had a debate with 17 vaccine skeptics on Jubilee's Surrounded series, and it went on for 3 hours. It was an interesting experience for me. I learned a lot, as well as gained very valuable experience. But there were about 5 points that I felt were being repeated that I want to address today. Huge thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video.
My third child, he got a vaccine that the doctor said were safe that caused him brain issues for the rest of his life, and he has arrested hydrocephalus.
Gave vaccines to the baby, and the baby had seizures.
My mother was vaccinated with the flu vaccine, and right after 3 days later, she received half of her face was paralyzed.
A through line through many of the conversations was people sharing anecdotes of someone having a negative reaction to a vaccine. I can't and I shouldn't really fact check that. I took everyone at their word. I thought everyone was discussing all of this in good faith. And then at the end of the day, vaccine side effects do happen. They're incredibly rare, especially serious ones, but they do happen.
I thought I was about to start calling people out or
I had to
something.
highlight this during the episode, that when you compare how pharmaceuticals are treated in research versus vaccines, vaccines have such a higher level of scrutiny because they're given to healthy patients. As opposed to pharmaceuticals, we allow a chance of higher rate of side effects because we're getting the trade-off of a major benefit. When someone tells us that they started experiencing a medical condition after getting a vaccine and they attribute it to a vaccine, I think you need to be very careful and think, yes, about correlation and causation, whether or not two things happen at the same time or one caused the other thing to happen. A great image representation is this. I'll give you another second. Is this. And also think about the natural incidents.
Epic.
For example, people who are 60 plus years of age have heart attacks. Now, if someone was to get a vaccine and then have a heart attack a week later, was this a natural heart attack or a vaccine-caused heart attack? How would we know? We would study those who have gotten vaccinated versus those who haven't and compare that natural incidence versus the incidence of people who have had vaccines. And if that rate goes up, now we start getting worried, we start investigating, we issue warnings. We've actually issued warnings about vaccines in the past because of the careful monitoring we do as a form of post-market surveillance.
Risk versus benefit, correct? Maybe you can give your viewpoint, whether maybe you're for or against, a court ordering the children to be injected with something that there is no harm to.
Injected.
But now we're seeing actual harm with the vaccine. They didn't die from the disease. They're dying from the vaccine.
Side effects versus benefits. Now, every time we do a medical intervention in healthcare, whether it's physical therapy, a surgery, a medication, a vaccination, we always want to think about the ratio of benefits to harms, and the benefits should always be outweighing the harms. And if we're not thinking about it, we're doing something wrong. So he pointed out how one of his daughters was getting a vaccine against his will because the mother of the child wanted the vaccine. But the reason the court sided with the mother was because they believed it was in the child's best health interest to get the vaccine. He brought in some data, and he followed a pretty good and logical approach here. He said, why would I give my child this vaccine when in my area, there have been 0 pediatric deaths. I didn't fact check that, but even if there were pediatric deaths, they were very low from COVID-19. Why would I give my child a COVID-19 vaccine when looking at the...
Lots of securities can't be priced efficiently by institutional investors due to low liquidity and small market caps. You can profit from those inefficiencies. That's how Buffett and many others started. I don't disagree with the overall sentiment, but I think you're too quick to dismiss the value of learning and reading about finance. Our performance isn't guaranteed, but the probability is 0. But if you're looking at incredibly small market cap stuff with low liquidity, it sounds like you're literally just talking about investing in startups or small cap companies. That's a full-time job. A random person who's read a little bit about finance is not about to go identify profitable, easy to find. Like this would require, you're talking about a full-time job at that point, right? That's a full-time job, is trying to find those opportunities.
The data...
What a retarded fuck, stop, please stop. Jesus.
Why would I give my child a COVID-19 vaccine when looking at the data, the pediatric deaths from COVID in his area were quite low, if not 0?
I can't work 2 jobs? You can, but you're talking about doing a job now as a trader. That's different than just being like an ordinary retail trader, just like read some shit and is like, oh, I'm gonna buy and sell this shit. That's a totally different type of thing. And small cap, like investing on low liquidity stuff. I'm just curious, do you think the average person is winning in that environment? Like these are, you would have to have a highly specialized person who's trained this as like a full-time investment thing. Stop.
The pediatric deaths from COVID in his area were quite low, if not 0, when in the VAERS database, it looked like there were thousands of deaths from receiving the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, following that logic, you could say, why in the world would you make a child get vaccinated? Well, you have to understand what the VAERS database actually represents. This is a vaccine adverse events reporting system. It's an open, passive reporting system. When we count the deaths from COVID, we count the deaths through the CDC legitimate system that's actually monitoring death certificates, sometimes overcounting deaths, but they're actually doing the work to verify those deaths happened. On the VAERS side, when you're talking about these thousands of reports, they're not verified. There could be duplicates, there could be falsified reports, there could be reports of things happening.
Of course not. That's why I said it requires dedicating time and effort. But saying it's impossible is just silly and demonstrates a lack of knowledge of financial markets. You're fucking retarded. Bye. You're gone for 30 days. This is the equivalent to me saying, like, you shouldn't try to perform surgery on your little brother or sister, and then you being like, that's actually not true at all. You can actually easily perform surgery on your little brother or sister if you just go to med school and do the training to become a surgeon. No fucking shit, Sherlock Holmes. If you're gonna extrapolate my argument to, you shouldn't try to be a fucking investor that thinks you can easily buy and sell derivatives, like, well, actually, if you have a full-time job as doing market research, like, at that point, you're hardly even like I don't even know if those people would be considered retail traders at that point. You're almost like an actual investor at that point. Like, that's a fundamentally different thing, obviously, than what I was talking about before. Holy shit.
As coincidences, what VAERS is useful for is if we start seeing a pattern emerge that is actively investigated by the CDC and the FDA, and then we're able to catch vaccine issues happening in the greater public. It's one of the data reporting systems that we use.
Actually, can you invest in non-indexed or things that aren't, if I go to my Vanguard or if you have like a Fidelity account, can you buy and sell stuff that's not on the NASDAQ or the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones? Do they list small cap companies? Do you even have the opportunity to do that? I've never even looked before. Okay, 4 people said no, and Metalloid said yes.
After the launch of a vaccination program.
In Japan, they don't start their vaccine schedule, I believe, until
So I'm going to say the answer is probably no, and Metalloid is referring to some hyper-specific thing that you can buy, but okay.
2 years old. Autism is almost non-existent.
So they don't cause autism, you're saying?
Correct.
At all?
Correct.
Well, that's news to me.
You can't have a discussion about vaccines without the topic of autism coming up. And there is some truth to the fact that autism rates have gone up. And people have tied that to the fact that children get more shots than they did in the past. However, this has been very firmly established as correlation. And again, I'm going to show you this image because correlation.
I can name you 100 stocks on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ that have a market cap under $10 million. Sure, but if it's listed on the NASDAQ or any of those major, like the major, is the S&P 500 NASDAQ, would you call these indexes? If they're listed there, these probably, my guess is these aren't going to be low liquidity companies, or at least not the type of low liquidity company that an average Joe could somehow take advantage of. And are you about, and now I feel like the counters, well, actually, they have very low liquidity. And your definition of very low liquidity is going to be compared to blue chip stocks or compared to the most traded securities listed on these exchanges, their liquidity is low. But it's probably, I seriously doubt it's so low that, you guys, this is so, listen, if I'm wrong, then just go trade and 100x your money. Then why are you arguing with me? Why would you ever argue with me about this in my chat? If I'm wrong, then just go and be a trillionaire, go be a billionaire, go make a fuck ton of money and beat the market and go do this consistently. If it's not easy, just go do it.
Does not equal causation. And I'm comfortable in saying this because there's been so much data disproving a causal relationship between vaccines and the rise in autism. There's been a study in Denmark with over 500,000 children. There's been a study in California, in the UK. There's been a meta-analysis in 2014 that included 1.2 million children.
Okay, the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ are exchanges, and then indices would be the S&P 500 or like the NASDAQ 100. Okay, gotcha.
There's been a meta-analysis in 2014 that included 1.2 million children. There's been 20 plus studies on the subject, and they all uniformly agree that there is no causal relationship. The only time it's actually been even discussed has been by a fraudulent study done by the person named Andrew Wakefield, who's been discredited. The study has been debunked,
because Big
and he's
Pharma
actually
got him.
lost his medical license.
Because Big
and that
Pharma
was
got
done on
him.
only 12 children. So are you going to trust a research of millions of children across different international lines, or one dude who's been discredited based on 12 case reports? Oftentimes, misinformation out there can be amplified by the news media, which is why I'm excited to tell you about Ground News, an app and website that gathers related articles from around the world all in one place so you can easily compare coverage, get to the facts, and break free from manipulative algorithms. For every story, you get context on each source's political bias, reliability, and ownership, all backed by 3 independent news monitoring services. There's a quick summary of the story from the left, center, and right perspectives. Here's a quick example. Despite measles being eradicated from the United States in the year 2000, it has actually...
We were just disputing your blanket statement, LOL. The last week has been completely abnormal volatility-wise, and there's plenty of money to be made from anyone who follows and agrees with your takes on what Trump's trade policy would do to the economy and market as a result. Motherfucker, you're literally a white name in chat, okay? If it was so obvious to make this call, then post your fucking, post your portfolio and show us the 100x gains that you made, because you should be leveraging the fuck out of all of your shit if you were so confident about these calls. I just fucking launched without enough fuel, because I'm fucking actually retarded. That's okay. What do I need? Water? Speed. How do I get my speed to stop? Whatever, don't care. My returns. This sucks. You doubled your money? That's it? On $1,000? If you knew the direction the market was moving, I need to see 7, 8, 9-figure returns. Like, you have knowledge that you can be certain that the market is moving in a certain direction, and you made $1,000 on it? Why? You should be borrowing or trading in whatever margin account you possibly can. Okay.
Come back and claim the life of a child in West Texas. With Ground News, I can see the coverage details of the story.
You're 100% wrong to take about the markets, by the way. One thing you're not considering is that modern markets are dominated by speculation bots that buy and sell 1,000 times a second. A competent trader can beat these bots consistently by harnessing the inner human potential and using vibes-based trading strategies based.
Bias distribution, factuality rating, and compare coverage between different sources. You see, Ground News shows you blind spots or stories that aren't covered by one side.
He doesn't want to abuse the infinite money glitch because it'll make life too easy.
Of the political spectrum. This measles story only has 17% of the coverage coming from the right, meaning if you read only right-leaning news, you could miss it. That's how confusion spreads, but with Ground News, we can fight back. So click the link below to subscribe and get 40% off the same unlimited access Vantage plan I actually use. Okay, now let's take a look at one of the most frustrating pieces of misinformation I came across.
When it comes to the science, right, back in the day it was labeled misinformation if you were to question the validity of, for example, masks. But just out of last year, an epidemiologist, Tom Jefferson, came out with a rigorous analysis that stated that they had no effect benefiting people in terms of the reduction of getting respiratory illness, including COVID-19.
Almost all the participants took issue with the style of messaging that the CDC chose to put forward, and the FDA and the WHO to some degree, surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. I agree with their frustrations. I think that they didn't do a great job. In fact, they were overconfident at times. They were saying things based on weaker data, which is wrong for anyone to do, not just the CDC or FDA. They oftentimes relied on expert opinion without explaining that they were basing their decisions on expert opinion, which is the lowest form of evidence. Instead of explaining why initially we didn't recommend masks, they just said no masks, then they said masks, then they said masks whatever. So I think the messaging wasn't done perfectly. That being said, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback and point out every mistake they made given what we know now. It's a lot harder to make those decisions in the moment when people's lives are on the line, but we could still be critical so that we can learn in the future and do better if a situation like this arises. There was one thing though that the skeptics in the room said that got me pretty frustrated. They started saying that those who were accused of spreading misinformation, like the disinformation dozen, as quoted by one of the major newspaper outlets, were actually the divine dozen.
People say the disinformation dozen, I say the divine information dozen, because they were kind of prophets when you look at it. If you look back at their old claims, a lot of things that they said came true.
If a broken clock says it's 3:15, when in fact it's 12:15, I'm not gonna give that clock credit when it turns 3:15. I want it to tell me the accurate time when I ask it, not for it to end up turning out to be true. And the reason why this is important is because when you ask someone for an answer in the scientific community, they should answer you not based on what might happen in the future or their subjective thoughts on what might happen in the future. They should look at the data that exists now and make a decision based off that data. Those individuals who were accused of spreading misinformation made such a wide variety of claims that some of them ended up turning out to be true. But that doesn't mean we should in fact then begin to trust them.
We're not in the labs actually seeing the vaccine process or the clinical trials, so we have to just take the experts' word and trust it, right?
Well, when you fly in a plane, you're not in the cockpit.
Right, so we put our faith in that. So you would say that we just have to put our faith in the experts, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this would require number one.
Damn, why the music?
One, a good intention. So
I
they
didn't
have
my
a good
speakers on,
intention
sorry.
to
I
help
didn't hear what you
people, to make their lives better, and also they have to be ethical. Is that correct?
Those are reasonable things, yeah.
Okay, so if they fall outside of the purview of those
Oh, there's a minimum speed, I bet, so that you can't actually get stuck in space, maybe.
two.
Did this guy reach out to me for a debate? He did, but he wants to do it like in real life, and I don't think, yeah, I don't know. Destiny, personally, I think the fact that you didn't even know retail investors can trade stocks outside of major exchanges is enough evidence you really don't know what you're talking about when it comes to finance. For someone that dives into so much nuance on every topic, I'm always surprised when your financial advisor just buy an ETF and DCA, as if there's no merit to studying finance and investing. I can't tell if you're like actually retarded or not. if you want to dive deeper into any of these areas, I've said multiple times, like, I'm not giving advice to well-seasoned traders. Like, if you know a fuck ton of shit about financial markets and you have somehow found a way to make money doing investing or whatever, obviously I'm not giving advice to you. Like, I'm very open that I'm not a fucking professional trader or anything at all. But my advice is, like, very clearly, so you're either autistic or you don't know anything about what you're talking about. My advice is, like, very clearly directed towards an average audience. And you would know that if you had any involvement in trading whatsoever, because 95% of people that even know what you know are probably losers when it comes to investing, right? They are. They're losers, right? At the end of the day, every retail sucker is more or less a trader for an institutional investor to come in and sweep up. Number one. Number two, I just wanted to make a list. I fucked your mom last night. 3, I fucked your mom's mom. 4, never mind, yeah.
Those are reasonable things, yeah.
Okay, so if they fall outside of the purview of those 2 criteria, would you say it is reasonable for us to be skeptical?
There was also some awkward moments of people saying if I had faith that the people creating these vaccines were acting in good faith. But to me, that's interesting because when you call an Uber driver or you get a food delivery, you don't spend that much time thinking, are they acting in good faith? And both of those times, you're putting your life on the line. So I think you hope in a society that we live in that everyone's acting in good faith. But it really pushed me to the question of how do I know that vaccines work and that they do?
Make the list, buddy. You'll realize how embarrassing your past statements are. Sure. Here's my list, okay? And it's just one thing. I have a general heuristic that I apply to life that is true in every single individual. This is like one thing that I'll say, all of you should follow this, okay? If there is money to be made somewhere, it's only going to happen through some special, unique opportunity available that's gated off in some way, so like an inheritance from a family member, or through some investment of time with some specialized form of training. So like in the course of going to school or something like that. Or the third one, I guess, through dumb luck. Anybody telling you that there is an amount of money to be made that's like respectable by just going to some area and doing something is always scamming you. And the first thing your mind should think of is, if you're telling me about this, why haven't you done this yet? Or why hasn't everybody else already come up and done this thing? Because if you think of those two things, they have come up and done these things. If there was a good amount of money to be made in low liquidity, small cap investments, other institutional investors would have already come and made that money. Now, there might be more money to be made there if you're willing to specialize in terms of investing your time, money, effort, mental resource or whatever into doing that investigation and doing that investment. That's fine, and you could do that. And I bet you could, and maybe there are people that do that. But at that point, this is not just a random thing you're doing. This is a job. You've turned this into a job. This is you're basically giving me the long form version of this sketch.
Now, I know this plan is foolproof. Check this out. First of all, you and me start working at the bank. Doesn't matter the position, okay? Just so long as we get in there, right? Then we just go there every day, do the work, gain their trust until we get them in the palm of our hand.
All right. That's how we get the money.
That's the beauty of it, bro. They deposit the money into our bank accounts. Week after week, month after month. They not even gonna know they being robbed. And then 20, 30 years later, we walk out the front door like nothing even happened.
Mother, that's called a job!
Like, that's what you're talking about. If you get essentially a job in full-time trading, you can make money probably doing it. Yes. Destiny, the point of small cap stuff is institutional investors can't spend time on a $10 million company where you might only find a company that's $2 million undervalued. It's like asking why Warren Buffett doesn't spend time looking at my uncle's lawn mowing business, because your uncle's lawn mowing business is not even valued in the 7-figure range. It might not even be valued in the 6-figure range when you take into account the total amount of debt the company is carrying. Number one, I love lists today. Number two, if there is money to be made, remember, we're talking about a small cap, low liquidity environment. None of this stuff is guaranteed. So you're also going to be dealing in a highly volatile environment where you could be losing money as well, right? Which is an additional risk. Typically, you don't have that risk when you work normal jobs. You're not going to be losing money, right? So there's a whole bunch of other shit. Like if you wanted, like you're basically making the argument, actually, Destiny, if you do this as a full-time job, you can make money doing it. Yes, that's correct. That's true of every job. When you work them, you can make money. But definitionally speaking, you're going to be working, if you're in a low liquidity, high volatility environment where unless you have some ultra specialized knowledge, it's not like you have the ability to magically price these assets better than, like you're saying the valuation of the company is off according to who? According to you? Like, how, like, but listen, I'm just a dumb fuck. I don't know anything. Go be a billionaire, okay? Don't listen to me. Don't listen to me take away your hopes and dreams. I'm just a retard on the internet. You can be a billionaire. Don't let me stop you from doing it, okay? I believe in you to become a billionaire by taking advantage of these small market cap companies. I don't even know where you buy these things at, so I'm a retard. I'm a walking Investopedia article, okay? That's all I have. I go to Wiki, Investopedia, I look at the terms, and then I repeat those definitions back to you, usually with a rape analogy. That's it. Yes, I love not being able to hear this.
Per un imprenditore come per un politico. Quello che riguarda i rapporti fra Italia e Stati Uniti ai tanti giovani che sono qua presenti al congresso della Lega.
Well, I hope that I hope that the United States and Europe can establish a very close.
For audio, is there really no difference between a digital signal and pure analog signal, or is there something lost in the digital sampling process that analog purists are right about? No, it's called the Nyquist theorem of sampling. Nyquist sampling theorem. They're wrong. You can perfectly sample the wave. Fuck them.
Partnership. We're obviously the United States.
I hate this guy. Sorry. Talk.
I hope that I hope that the United States and Europe can establish a very close partnership. We obviously are, there's an alliance already, but I'm hopeful that there can be a very close relationship with America and Europe. And I'm hopeful, for example, with the tariffs, that at the end of the day, I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally, in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America.
That's cute, but that is a 100% contrary statement to what your daddy is saying, but okay.
That would be that's what I hope occurs. And also more freedom of people to move between Europe and North America, if they wish. If they wish to work in Europe or wish to work in America, they should be allowed to do so, in my view. So that has certainly been my advice to the president.
E ringraziamento a nome del popolo italiano.
Okay.
Hourly Amazon employees.
Somebody said NBC had a good interview today with conservatives making all the rounds on the liberal media. Oh boy. Pete Navarro attacks Elon Musk.
Elon Musk at the beginning. It was interesting to hear Elon Musk at the beginning talk about a zero tariff zone with Europe. He doesn't understand that. And the thing that's, I think, important about Elon to understand, he sells cars. That's what he does. And if you look, for example, at the Tesla factories in Texas, they're assembly plants, and they get a lot of their content from China, Mexico, Japan, and Taiwan and elsewhere. It was interesting.
Damn. What do you want?
Hey, did you have a minute to talk about...
I got all the minutes to talk. About what?
Good. I'm going to pull up some more stuff to talk about then. But first, since everyone's only talking about tariffs right now, I was going to talk to you a little bit about kind of the legality of them. I think that you've been...
completely
generous
correct
in the way that you talk about them.
What do you mean generous?
Well, let me make sure, because you said varying levels of
factual statements that were all true. Go ahead.
I don't know how hyperbolic you are at times, but how legal do you view these tariffs that he's been putting in place, all the way back to the Canada, Mexico, China ones, up to the more recent ones? Excuse me.
Unfortunately, I would
whenever
say probably. Well, okay, let's get into legal philosophy. When you say legal, what does that mean?
Or do you think that him enacting these tariffs are within the bounds of his powers as the president?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So that was okay. Then I do want to talk to you about these, because I would I would at least like to put forward the argument to you that they're not.
Okay.
And I think that you should not view them as legal going forward, especially in your rhetoric, just because I think it's kind of it's letting them not make the argument.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people are doing that right now. So I'm sure you know he enacted most of these under the IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. And that was in conjunction with him, of course, declaring the national emergency under the NSE, National Security Emergencies. And
I don't know anything about the IEP, so I might be retarded. Go ahead.
It's okay. So then I think that where you're kind of short-circuiting the argument where you say, well, he's allowed to make this national security, he's allowed to declare national security emergency, and therefore he's able to do these things. And you're not wrong that he's able to make that declaration, and you're not wrong for saying that Congress is abdicating its power by not voting on it and changing the meaning of time to not vote on it. That's all true. But then the next part where you say, and so he can do these things, isn't really supported by case law. And a lot of Republicans and MAGA people are kind of counting on the fact that you get caught up in this like incredulity at how stupid it is to say this is a national security issue.
Okay.
And so there's really nothing in the IEEPA that gives him that power. And if you read the text of it, it's really broad, and a layperson would read it and go, oh, like it says that he can regulate transactions with foreign persons and entities and governments. And it's been around for about 50 years, and every single time it's been used, it has not been used for tariffs.
Okay.
So that initially makes you go, okay, so no one in the past has thought it was used for tariffs. And then whenever you look at, there's other acts that control the president's powers when it comes to tariffs, and those all explicitly spell out that he has those powers. And so it's a bit dry.
Yeah, so this is why I was kind of half joking when I said like it depends on what you mean when you say legal.
Right.
Because like if we were having like if this is like a court case or whatever, like I would argue that the Mexico Canada tariffs, the way that they've played out, I would say that at least the Canada ones are not legal, and that the national emergency part was a bullshit declaration that was done in bad faith. And the way that he's using these tariffs is very clearly betraying the fact that it's a national emergency, right? Like, for instance, for him to make the argument that, oh, I'm levying these because of a national emergency about fentanyl at the border, well, then why are we talking about like reciprocatory? Why are we reciprocating tariffs, or why are we talking about factories, and why haven't we given Canada a way to escape the tariffs by controlling, you know, the flow of fentanyl or whatever, right? Obviously, it's not being used for that purpose. But I mean, like, letter of the law, I'm sure they'll argue that it's legal, but I don't know if it would survive like scrutiny. But I don't even know if these things are allowed to be scrutinized or how that works. But yeah, okay, sorry.
Right. It's fine. So 2 parts of that. One, you kind of got to the right answer there, but I would caution you. There's no purpose in anybody analyzing the declaration of the national security. That can only be done by Congress. And if Congress isn't going to do it, that's it.
Sure.
And so it doesn't. But you're right to then say. But then if you look at how he reacts to that national emergency, that is able to be reviewed judicially, and you can say, well, look. The way that this law is written and the way that it has been enforced in the past and the way that courts have upheld it in the past is it has to be narrowly tailored to fit the emergency itself. And
wait, who would have standing to bring that case?
Technically, anybody that could be harmed by the action. So there's currently a case down in Florida of just like a person who's like, I'm going to have to pay more for products because of these actions, and that's standing enough for me to bring it. Now, countries or entities that might have to pay the tariffs when they enter the nation or whatever their products do, they could sue. foreign countries could sue as depending on if it implicates trade agreements or if they themselves actually do trade with America.
Okay.
So standing isn't super difficult to get to. Really, what you're doing is you're trying to you then want to say, look, this isn't a narrow enough. This is one, it's not narrow enough, or two, there are alternatives that aren't as harsh that can address the same problem. And then the biggest one is that whenever you declare a national emergency, if you invoke the IEPA, you don't get to then invoke it again for the same national emergency. You really are only supposed to invoke it once per national emergency. There's a gray area in there, but not with what he's doing now, right? Where he's saying, I'm going to now adjust, like the way he's like adjusting the tariffs, the way he's coming in and changing what it affects and things like that. And then the fact that none of it is, you were correct to say that none of it's really addressing fentanyl, right?
Yeah.
It's not, fentanyl is contained within this lumber. They're smuggling it in there, so we're going to stop the lumber from coming in before we can figure out how to search lumber better.
Can I ask a boring legal question? If you, let's say that, okay, so.
Not to me.
Standing in terms of being harmed by one of these tariffs, right? So I asked you who would have standing, and you would say to arguably anybody who was harmed. However, ordinarily, you wouldn't have a case if the president did it for legitimate reasons. So wouldn't you wouldn't necessarily be suing because you're harmed from the act itself. You're harmed because of the president's misinterpretation of the act. Would you as a citizen still have the standing to bring that type of claim, or does that not even matter? Do you understand what I'm asking? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I know what you're asking. No, you're right, because you can't sue, like I can't sue the government for the taxes I have to pay. That's like a whole thing you learned about law.
Sure, yeah.
Right? We can't sue them over that. And I can't even sue them over taxes that they pass, right? So let's say they pass a tax that I think they shouldn't have passed, but there's no constitutional, it's not like it gets black people only or something, right? They just come in and they say, we're going to tax lawyers.
Because at the end of the day, I'm not actually suing him for. I'm not actually suing him for the tariff. I'm suing him because I don't think he has the legal authority to do that tariff. Yeah. So as a citizen, I would have the standing to sue him because I'm harmed by what I'm assuming is his misinterpretation of that particular thing.
Right. And so and this legal case in Florida, it's pretty good. It actually gave me a lot of good places to do research to come talk to you about it. But it goes into kind of a more nitty-gritty reasons why he's kind of acting outside the scope that I'm not going to get into. But I think it's important that whenever we're discussing it, or more so than you're discussing it, that it's not that Trump bullshitted his way into making up a fake national security. No, he's acting in bad faith when he's enforcing things to try to solve the national security. And these tariffs are illegal. They are not. This is not a legal power that he has. There's only one instance in the entirety of American history in which you could maybe say there was a comparable event that happened. And even then, it's really not. It happened in the 70s with Nixon, and it had a lot to do with like currency manipulation by other nations, and it was very targeted. The president nowadays could do it under a separate act that gives that explicit power to him. Back then, it was under an act that didn't give him the explicit power, the whole thing. But there's just no precedent for him to be able to do this. And people might point to in his first term, there was all these discussions of imposing tariffs and things like that, but he never actually did that. He always backed out at the last minute, and he never actually invoked the power, so this question wasn't there. So I just think it's letting them, it's giving them a pass to not have to make that argument of like, look, and I don't think you necessarily need to get into all the detail that I am right now, but like, look, I don't think that this act gives him that power, and pushing it. And if you ever end up debating with a conservative ever again, I don't know if that'll happen because they all just silent now. But if you do, put it back on them to say, no, you need to come through it and show this to me, and then tell me why this has never been used this way before. Tell me why there's this is the first time it's ever been done.
I don't disagree with you there, but they turn that novelty argument around in a very fucking annoying way, which I'm sure you've heard before, where they'll say that like nobody's ever challenged the president using it before, and then as you I think correctly point out, well, it's because they've never done it this way before, right? These were a lot of the Jan 6 arguments, right? A president's never been charged for something like this before. It's like, well, the president's never done anything like this before. But it just feels like they flip it. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I also this is all just deeply unserious stuff. I don't even know if any of them, besides like the actual cabinet members, are going to even try. Like even when you've got people like fucking Ted Cruz pushing against you,
Yeah.
Like this is beyond reproach.
Yeah,
It's fucked. Yeah.
I agree. I just, when we first talked, you said, hey, we need to make sure there's like a list of the crimes that we can hold him against. And this is just one of them where it's like, I think that people are so upset and shocked, and rightfully so, about the stock market that this part of it kind of gets lost in there. He's an idiot. He's doing crazy things. This is just another level, another layer of illegal actions on his behalf. Sure. And, unfortunately, there's no way the courts are going to act fast enough to really get in the way of these. And even if they did, I don't know how. I don't know the apparatus of this of how these tariffs are actually collected and things like that to see how they could get in the way of it. Yeah. Since it's all under his control. But I just thought I'd bring that to your attention, just as something to make sure, because I heard you say it on the anything else, and then you had something similar just now a little while ago where you're kind of like, oh, we said this national security thing. It's like, it's really the smallest part of this.
Sure. I guess I think in a layman conversation, I might focus on that just because of how ridiculous the national emergency is. I feel like it's an easier point to communicate than does the president have the power to do this figuring out. But yeah, go on.
I think that's fair. I suffer a lot from lawyer brain, and so I do have times where it's hard for me to know exactly how, like, which ones land with just the average person.
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess technically I don't know that right now either because no average person is even talking about this shit. So, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Then I also, thanks for contributing to the Pragmatic Papers this week. I appreciate it. Everybody in the newsletter really appreciates you putting that in there. Because it is everybody in chat. It's live right now. Go to Reddit and read the latest edition. Destiny wrote an article that you all are going to love.
Oh boy, it's super short. I might write a longer. I don't know what the appropriate length or anything should be next time I go. I don't know, but yeah.
Look, you're defending the most vulnerable members of our society.
True.
Okay.
Billionaires.
Yeah, I mean, they're one of the smallest demographics in society if you think about it. So
they are, and overwhelmingly Jewish, so prone to anti-Semitic attacks as well. Yeah, not good.
I know. Yeah. But something, so I do the weekly executive order report, and what I tried to do this week, real quick, was there were a lot. There were about 10 this week, which is more than normal, much more than normal. And what I was thinking was, I'm going to go in and add in articles of people that are also reporting on these, and just so that way there's more in-depth stuff, because I'm just kind of doing a quick pass for people. And I found that about 60-70% of these executive orders are not being reported on at all within a week. It's been about a week and a half since they were signed.
Sure.
And a lot of these just don't have any reporting. And you spoke about kind of the Nazification of the economy, kind of how they start picking and choosing and kind of controlling the levers of like who is successful along the lines of the state. And doing the executive order report, there have been a couple in the last few weeks that really are lining up for that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a lot of control around not just the money in the government, but also the spending of the money in the government going on.
Yeah.
So they're consolidating a lot of the decision making around who spends how, like whether money is spent or whether money is sent to people that receive benefits under the White House. So,
yeah, like for a lot of like the lawyer stuff that they've done the crazy extortions for, and for a lot of the program cuts, they're targeting. It's one of the worst things. I won't grant anything to that Doge organization ever, never. Not even people who, it's a good concept. It's not, because all it's doing is it's just targeting expenditures along strictly ideological lines. That's all it's doing. I don't see I haven't seen a single thing talking about waste, fraud, or abuse anywhere. It is strictly along the lines of like, do you support DEI or the president's agenda or shit like that? And it's like, this is nothing. This is not anything. Yeah.
Well, yes, for sure. But I think a little bit more insidious and a little bit more like, these people are smarter than we've been giving them credit for, is that they're setting up systems within every agency so that once Doge is gone, they don't need it anymore. They're making it where it's like literally similar to the Communist Party in China. Every agency is having these officials within them to watch all transactions that are being submitted.
Yeah.
Then on the other end of that, they go to a centralized person that reports directly to the president. And so now, and then also they're making it where agencies aren't allowed to spend money or do transactions independently. It has to go through a centralized thing, which sounds good to people that don't understand the system. And I'm not going to go into all the reasons why right now, but what it does is it makes it where now the president, Donald Trump, gets to veto any transaction at any time. And he can just turn and say, okay, guess what? These vendors, they were mean to me on Twitter. We're not going to be working with them anymore. Or these guys over here paid me personally money. So now those transactions are going to go to them instead of to these guys. And so it's making the government more efficient. It's just making it more efficient for the president to extract wealth from the operations within the government.
Yeah.
And nobody is reporting on this. And it's
language
multiple executive orders
that I've seen showing up in so many different executive orders, and maybe it's showing up elsewhere too. I don't think I've ever seen it before in government, where the language is like, in order to help the president best carry out his agenda or whatever. Like I'm seeing a lot of that language pop up in places. I'm like, that's kind of fucking weird, but okay, yeah.
You're right. Where like the one thing that like I do think that the president is kind of the embodiment of the U.S. government. Not in a unitary executive kind of way, but in the sense of whenever the president is acting, he's not acting as a person. He's acting as the government. He's speaking to foreign nations, right? And so whenever you have executive orders like this and things like that, unless it's some kind of like passion project thing or like, oh, we want to make, this is kind of like a nice thing to do, so the president's going to kind of act like it's more of a personable thing rather than just like the government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. Saying Donald Trump wants to make it where actually, any procurement of office goods and like actual physical goods for the government, Donald Trump personally wants to make sure this kind of thing happens. And you're like, why are you talking that way? And it is because, like you're saying, where this kind of it's more forceful. It's my will enacted upon this thing rather than we're like building a government and governing.
Yeah, and it's a clever way to. It's not only like this unitary executive theory. Like it's a clever way of actually stealing power from the Congress as well, right? Because the president isn't really supposed to be giving like that heavy of an ideological direction towards funding. That's up to Congress to determine like programs and stuff that gets funded. It's not up to the president to decide if he wants to. I don't know about the Department of Education. Was he allowed to shutter that unilaterally?
The way that's written, yes.
Okay.
Like that's not illegal what he did. As far as I understand right now, I need to.
Like the USAID thing, I think was not legally allowed. I don't believe.
That, as far as I can tell, no.
But I don't know about the Department of Education.
Yeah, a lot of the USAID stuff as well, I think has to do with kind of like commitments, and he's breaking commitments that were made. So it's not quite contract law, right? But it's kind of an estoppel situation where it's like these people were relying on this thing. They've done these things. They have damages against you. But then also like the firings and that kind of stuff wasn't allowed. Department of Education, it looks like they are maintaining those kind of legally required things like managing the student loans, right? Like those are still going to be managed even if poorly by the government. And
SBA,
we need to see how it plays out. Yeah, it's going to be hell, but technically he might be able to thread that needle. The bigger issue, I think, really is like once you get like, because he's saying as long as there still exists a Department of Education on paper, I haven't technically broken the law, and right now technically that's true, but.
Well, that's not necessarily true though, right? Because you can't do huge like reductions in force legally, no? Like you have to.
You can't do them quickly, but I mean, and that's kind of the weird thing is like he's trying as hard as he can to make it go like as fast as possible. But like, if he actually went through the proper processes and everything, they could they could get rid of all these people. I know what you're saying, and like. I think it would be pretty easy to make a case that at some point in the process they're doing something illegal to where they shouldn't be allowed to do this, and I think that whenever it comes to the Department of Energy, like the big issue there is that like since the Department of Education is really a big pot of money to be spent in ways that help the education system, it's easier to kind of like quote unquote dismantle that, where it's like, well, we're just not going to pay the money out, right? There are other things it does, but the biggest thing it does is just pay money out. And
I mean, if Congress has allocated
passed those-
funds for that specifically, the president has to. No, like I don't think the president has the right to.
And if Chuck Schumer wasn't in the Senate, that would still be true. But the continuing resolution passed, and from what I need to read more about this, like I said, so I don't want to. I'm trying not to make strong statements, but my understanding is that continuing resolution basically said we're not going to allocate funds in such a way that is going to like block you from doing what you want to do. Like,
Oh, sure. So that doesn't necessarily contradict then what I'm saying, right? Because the Congress is in a way authorizing it with the CR. Right?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying.
That's
Yeah,
right,
you're right. You're right. Where like they're tacitly right, they're impliedly saying you can do this. Yes, fair, very fair. But yeah, I think that unfortunately, and these are big, like part of education, that is a very big problem. The tariffs are very big problems, but in the background, we have these other things going on that, you know, it's incredibly scary from the perspective of like I was talking with my friend about how bad a lot of this is, and he's like, oh, the stock market just does that sometimes, right? And he's not even like a Trump guy. He's just like, oh, you know, stock market just drops.
Oh, he's just a random. Okay, because I was gonna say the stock market.
Yeah, he's just a
actually
normie.
Yeah.
He's just a normie. He's like, well, I was like, it dropped like 10 points in 2 days. Like, you guys, that's like, he's like, what happens? And I was like, I just stopped. I just like changed the subject because like I don't need, like the amount of discussion that needs to happen for me to like be able to talk to you about this and why this is unique. I don't have time for it. But you know, I think that in the like those things are all taking our attention away because let's say the tariffs get undone and somehow everybody in the world goes, you know what, we get it. Y'all were just acting a little crazy and we're fine. None of that. No one's attention is on these other things that are inside the government actually like turning it into a machine to funnel money to Donald Trump and his cronies. And maybe it is, and I just didn't find it, but that was something that concerned me. And then, but yeah, so that was that's kind of that
there's
one.
basically like, there's like a billion different horrifying implications from If you could pick like a top 3 like things that have gone on so far, I guess that you think are horrifying. I guess what are the things that you think are people should be the most focused on, or some of the things you think are the most troubling? Yeah.
I think that the Trump's actions towards the military high command and officers within the military is probably one of the most concerning things that's going on. That's number one. Just that is such a strong signal.
What do you mean by that?
So he pretty early on, this kind of, I don't know if it flew under the radar, it was reported on, but he came in and just fired everybody that was like in the top military positions, right? So like head of and to be fair, I'm not a military guy. I don't know how common that stuff is, but from my understanding and what I've been told is it was done in a way that was outside the norm and was very clearly done so to
install loyalists or whatever.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like when I see someone starting using the term loyalists with military, that right there already, I'm like, I have to say that's my biggest concerning thing. The second one is what we've talked about, the constitutional crisis of them ignoring the courts. That has to be my number 2. But then I think when it comes to number 3, and I'm thinking about like the scariest thing in there for me is I think for me it's the Congress not standing up. And you're right that they are starting to with the tariffs because of the market and everything, but
barely.
The total, yeah.
I feel like
the total.
I might be. Maybe I'm wrong because it just depends on who I see on the media or whatever. But like, I truly do believe that there needs to be almost like a fucking legal purge of House Republicans. I don't know what it is about the House of Representatives, but there are like people like Mike Johnson. Like this dude is evil. Like this is an evil human being. This is not a good person. It's like a horrible human being.
Yeah. It's a real like it's a situation of like. I think a lot of apathy and a lot of like people voting down ticket, you know, just like straight, just like whatever's red, you know, I'm gonna vote red till I'm dead or whatever it is, and it just lets these people kind of like slip in and skate in, and nobody pays attention to any of these people other than AOC, maybe Matt Gaetz, Johnson because he's a speaker, maybe. And then after that, everyone's like, that's just a place where there's a lot of people sitting around voting on things. And you're right. And it's now become this farm of horrible human beings that are like saying and posting and trying to pass laws that are just the worst thing ever. And I think that is like why we are where we are with Congress, where they're just abdicating just all of the, not even their duty, just abdicating their powers. It's like kind of pathetic in a lot of ways, where it's like, you realize you guys have a lot of power, right? And like, even like just be
Yeah, but
self-serving.
they don't
Even if
even
you were
though,
just
because
self-serving, it
the
would be
power
better.
that they're looking at is to get reelected, and that's what their primary fear is. They have the quote unquote power of being in Congress, but if Trump was like, "Oh, who are you? Who are you with again? Who elected you? Well, we're going to primary you." That's what they're basically, all of their
Right.
political careers are always being dangled over them. So it ends up with them.
And-
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, like, for me, my big stuff since I'm an attorney, like, I'm an even bigger like procedure and institutionalist simp than you are. Like, for me though, like, a lot of that I've told people, like, I think that because we have like video conferencing and the technology we have nowadays, I don't think that a congressional representative should be allowed to leave their district for more than like a week at a time if they're elected. You should have to live amongst the people you represent. You should have to be close to the constituency, because one, those people can get to you and protest peacefully, but also it makes you in that community. You are more tied to it. You are not separated from them and things like that. But I mean, that was something that I said back whenever like there was a semblance of a real government. Nowadays, yeah, I agree with you. We need a legal purge of like all of those. And hey, maybe we're gonna have some big blue wave come in and get them all out of there. It'd be great, I guess. But like, we got what, 18 months till then? I don't know. Like, we got like, it's gonna suck. And so yeah, I'm with you. But like,
There's also like, I think there's this issue now in the world that the rest of the world now is going to be looking at the United States like fucking praying to God that, say we get an actual, like a Democrat in who can govern, and then it's like, oh God, there's a recession in the world. Now everybody's looking at the US like, well, there's a recession. Are you guys about to elect like Hitler 3.0 now? Because now you guys are upset about some shit? Because it seems like, yeah, for Americans, if they get mad, it's like, okay, well, I'm literally going to elect the worst possible fucking human being, rapist, whatever the fuck I can find, because I'm so ass pained about everything. And it's like, yeah, it's just insane.
If you want to talk about there's the greatest motivation in the world now for every country on the planet to fuck with our elections. Because apparently if you don't fuck with them enough, then yeah, you're right. Americans are so stupid, they'll just destroy it. Right? They'll just destroy everything. And yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned last time that I did study quite a bit about the NAFTA and the USMCA and like international trade law and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting because the NAFTA was a little bit of this, but USMCA definitely was an amazing document whenever you look at it on terms of international trade, and it is incredibly sad that we are leaving it behind now because it's not going to survive these tariffs. These tariffs have, even though we're exempting the stuff within them, what the USMCA was setting up to be, it was like the gold standard for,
and it's the largest unified market, I think, in the world. I think collectively, the three.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're talking about like I'm sorry. I'm talking about like the legal stuff.
Oh no, sure, yeah.
We had there, like, people talk a lot about like, well, if you don't have soft power, all you have is hard power, and you got to go shoot people, right? Mm-hmm. And like the USMCA was probably one of the best examples of how to actually turn soft power into real tangible power against other countries and things like that. Like, there was enforcement mechanisms for so many things that weren't inherently economic, having to do with pollution, workers' rights, local investment, local community investment, and stuff like that the three nations could interact with. And
that's one of my biggest things that makes me upset when these dipshits like Lutnick or Trump or anybody else are like, well, they were doing this and blah, blah. And it's like, well, ignore the fact that you're lying about all of that. Even if every single thing you're saying is true, you have a mechanism by which to address it. Like, you're literally part of a joint trade agreement. Like, what, I don't know what people think these agreements are, but well, you know more about it than I do probably, but like one of the most important factors in a lot of these trade things are your arbitration, right? Like, what right do you have to redress grievances? What does the process for that look like? That's an incredibly important part of these things. Why wouldn't you utilize any of that process, especially given that Trump literally negotiated the USMCA, arguably, it happened under his admin. Like, yeah, it's so stupid.
Yeah, and it's kind of thing. It's like, I mean, the U.S. is, since before Trump, has been, backing out of a lot of like international court stuff and never really put their back into it. And I agree with you in this, that the arbitration is important, especially because if you're the most powerful, especially as an attorney, you learn this, like when you're the most powerful player in an arbitration, stuff like that, especially like ongoing ones where it's going to be happening multiple times, you want everybody else invested. because everybody else can just scatter and do whatever they want, right? What, like El Salvador, right? Let's say the U.S. wants to trade with them. Well, the U.S. sure as fuck has the most money in this situation and can come in and lay down some serious cash, set up some factories, set up all sorts of jobs. But the El Salvador has a cheat code where they can say, "Oh, we just nationalized all that. Haha, it's ours." And so the U.S. wants them to not do that.
Which is called, this is expropriation, right? Is a huge problem. Like,
right,
this
exactly.
Is when people talk about the upsetness of Iran and the revolution and us, deposing the Shah and all that, that was over them expropriating oil companies. I think from the UK, and then the same thing has happened in Venezuela or Bolivia, where they expropriated all of their shit as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so whenever you have these, so then what happens is if the biggest player in the room says, "Hey, you're only going to get all this money if you actually play along in these courts," people will do it. And people go, "Oh, but that means that the U.S. has to give up sovereignty, blah, 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 blah." And it's like, technically you're right, but when you look at how much money the U.S. makes off this, when you look at also, we basically, as the biggest player, get to control these courts and can control how this stuff is dictated. Like, when you look at it, it truly is us just giving up a bunch of control and power on the international stage. Like, everyone in the administration likes to act like, "Oh, these people are all, they're tricking us and they're actually taking advantage of us."
Yeah.
It is, and especially because the U.S. just out in the open is controlling these things. Like, if you look at the how slanted a lot of these deals are towards the U.S., we have serious advantages here. And you said it right, where, well, they think that if the other side's making any profit, that means that we lost out on profit. And that's kind of the issue here. And I think that them attacking USAID was they did it for a lot of reasons, but one of the best reasons that they did it for themselves, I'm saying the best for them, is that they can say, "Look at all this money that we are just giving away," and then they can kind of put that into the American public's mind of like, we're just giving money away. And then when they talk about a trade deficit, it's like, see, remember that USAID where we were giving all that money away? This is just like that. We're giving money away. And that's the problem.
And one of my biggest complaints that I've said over and over again is these people don't understand how much soft power they're giving away. Then to take that argument one step further, I've been complaining about this a lot recently, is these fucking losers in talking about how the only chance the U.S. can stave off any of these catastrophic effects, what they start to do is they invoke, whether knowingly or not, they start invoking all of our soft power. Lutnick has been doing it over and over again. He's saying, like, of course they want to come here. We've got the most open economy in the world. We've got this. Yeah, no shit, because we did free trade. Like, you're invoking the very soft power that you're trying to fucking destroy to claim that people will continue to want to do business with us. Like, it's so stupid. It's like taking a homeless shelter that fucking murders people and saying all the homeless are going to want to come here because we're a shelter for them. It's like, not even turn it into a fucking kill shelter for homeless people. Like, it's so dumb. It's so annoying. Yeah.
It is, and like, I don't envy you that you have to like try to convince people of this stuff, but it really is it's really cringy now for me to look back on like the professor that I worked with or that was like teaching us and like we did research with and stuff, and like how like fucking like libbed out she would get talking about free trade and like so excited about like the potential of regional trade stuff in the future, and it was like, damn, like we're like, this is like utopia talk, but like I actually like, here's the text of it, here's like the nuts and bolts of it. And it made me really feel like an asshole for talking shit about the Trans-Pacific Partnership
that was
years before. That was a bad time for me. I should have done that, but regardless, that was kind of the international trade thing. Last one that I want to talk to you about.
Oof, that just as a quick thing, that TPP was also going to be like a gold standard. There were other countries, the arbitration stuff in there, the labor laws, and the different people in the U.S., the labor unions, environmental boards that were all brought to the table for negotiating that. Yeah, that would have been crazy.
It was, it's not like, I don't know what the liberal version is, but it's like when they say like, oh yeah, like gay space communism or whatever. It's like, it was like that almost, where it's just like, holy shit, you guys are getting this done? Okay, cool. And then like womp womp. But no, the last thing I want to talk about, you like, I saw you talk about it for like half a second on stream. And I don't know if you talked about it at all anywhere else. Eric Adams getting
oh Jesus,
dismissed. Okay, I got into a big argument about this with my communist friends, and they didn't get it, why it was the right thing to do. Do you, like, what's your understanding of what happened in the dismissal of that case?
Well, they did dismiss the charges, but he did it with prejudice, which changes it a ton, I think.
It does.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean,
would you say for the better or for the worse? How do you view that?
Well, I mean, like, if your DA literally tells you they're not pursuing it anymore, I think you kind of have to, right? Because I think it's exceptional if the prosecutor files a dismissal of charges. It requires an insane thing where a judge will say no to that, as long as both sides are in agreement. And if you get rid of the without prejudice part, then at least you get rid of this idea that they can charge him with a crime in the future, something can control him through blackmail, which I think was a huge concern over everything. So I guess in the way that it could have played out, I mean, I guess they did it. It would have been better probably if justice was served, because it seems like he genuinely did do a pretty shitty thing, but this is probably the next best outcome given the current admin.
Yeah, okay, you've got generally the right take. I mean, it's a really long opinion, opinion, and I would recommend you read it, but it's like 78 pages, but it gives a very good timeline of the events surrounding the case, and the investigation, and the motion to dismiss, because, like you said, they asked for it without prejudice, so they could bring it back later and blackmail him, and the court says... And the court goes through the reasons they gave and why they're bullshit. And then it says, like, here are your public statements and the statements of the attorneys that quit and posted their resignation letters explaining why this is an issue. My commie friends were just like, well, it sounds like he got off. And that means that, it's like,
I mean, he did get off, and it's bullshit. But you can't be mad at the judge. You just have to be mad at Pam, right?
Yeah, and it's a thing where, like, if you ever talk to conservatives again and they bring up Eric Adams getting off as evidence of like the deep state or something like that, that judge is obviously within the deep state. Well, they can make that argument all they want, but the only reason the judge did that explicitly was because of the malfeasance of the federal government. And I'm not saying you're going to convince them, but it's just like, no, look, like literally, if the Trump DOJ just showed up and tried the case as it was handed to them, it would have gone through, and they would have been able to take down a sitting Democrat mayor of the largest city in America, and that would have been such a huge fucking win. Like, you don't even need to spin it. You don't need to make it into this goofy, weird corruption thing. Just go in and fuck up a Democratic governor. Hell, he's even black, so you get to talk about DEI when you do it.
Yeah, mayor, right?
But for some reason,
but I know what you mean.
Mayor. Sorry, mayor. And it's like, so why? Like, and so them doing that was just like a colossal fuck up. Whether it's from a Democrat or even a conservative side, you should be able to say that. But I mean. It's a long opinion, and you've got the most of it. So
one thing that I don't like too, and it drives me crazy, and I don't know if there's ever anything to do this, okay? But like when you're filing paperwork, okay, with a fucking court, and you're doing all of this under penalty of perjury, people's statements are a lot fucking different than what they say to the media, and I fucking hate that. It happened a lot with the election fraud stuff, and I think to some extent it's happened with this Eric Adams case, because in all of the filings that Bovee did and claimed, unless there was something else that was filed that I missed, Bovee explicitly said that there was nothing wrong with the investigation itself. It was only the perception of there being something wrong. He explicitly said, and I think the judge in one of his something about emotion or something he filed, he literally said that, like, you guys even said in your own filings there was literally nothing wrong with this investigation. You just think it looks bad, which is exactly the only thing. Yeah. And
the judge does a really good, and that's part of why it's so long, is the judge does a good job of being like, here's what you filed, and here's what you told multiple people publicly, and here's what other people within your organization said publicly, and the way that a motion to dismiss at that point works is that the judge can look at anything. He doesn't have to only look at the record because of the circumstances of like the nature of the motion and everything like that.
Sure.
Because once the prosecutor is potentially acting, either harassing the defendant, acting in bad faith, or acting in a way that is like harmful to the public, once the court suspects that, the court can consider anything.
Sure.
And there's a whole debate within the Second Circuit about whether or not they do it. I'm not going to go into here, but they can and they do, and he does. And he does a really good job of dismissing it for that reason. And yes, I would have loved Eric Adams to, if ever there are any lefties that like get bitchy about this, the issue here is that Eric Adams did something bad in the past, and we should hold him accountable for that. This judge is not saying that he didn't do anything. This judge is saying those bad things happened. It'd be great if we could hold him accountable, but if we go through with this, bad things are going to happen in the future to people that aren't even involved with this. And so it's not we're not like, they always
the judge. I don't think the judge could even do anything, right? Because the AG has literally said we're done. Like, we're not pursuing this anymore. So, like, I mean, what?
Well. Right. And the judge goes into that. He says, if I deny this motion, they just won't move forward with the case. And it's the same thing as if I granted it. Right. And they could still do the same harm. And so it's important to just kind of like make sure that that's like understood. It's like the reason they did this is the judge chose to do this was to prevent harm. Whatever bad things you think about Eric Adams, yes, he's still the mayor. And yes, he still gets to do those bad things. But he's not going to remove the sanctuary status of New York, at least not yet. And he's not going to aid ICE in their activities within New York City, which is what we were facing down. So those are the things there that I just want to bring up. Also, real quick, Luigi Margelloni, however you say his name, they're going for the death penalty on that. What do you think? They're going, he killed one of your chosen ones. He killed a billionaire.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
People like turn this into, they try to turn this, like people ask two different questions when they ask the same question here, is they'll say, do you support this? My answer is absolutely yes. But then they'll say like, oh wait, so do you support the death penalty? So those are two separate questions. I think they should go for the max thing. I think that what he did was unbelievably abhorrent. You can't just openly execute people in a functioning society. That's insane. I mean, I think they should have to prove their case and do everything they ordinarily would have to do. But I mean, yeah, Jesus, you can't just execute people, at least not.
Well, I mean,
not those guys.
I think he should be convicted of murder, and I guess it's my lawyer brain coming in of like the question of sentencing versus conviction are different. So I agree with you that he should be convicted of murder, but if he was then sentenced to death, you would not be like, let me say it this way. You don't think it's inappropriate for the DOJ to be seeking the death penalty in this case?
Well, when you say seeking, I think that implies two things. One is that you can choose, I think, what you think you're going to charge somebody with, like a certain class of felony might carry like capital punishment with it. And then two, I believe, isn't it the case that as a prosecutor, you can request a certain punishment from the judge? Like, this is why we think he should be sentenced like this, or you can recommend like a certain level of punishment, or am I?
Sure, you can, but the bigger thing, okay, I think I might be getting too lawyer brain here, but whenever you seek the death penalty, that changes the nature of the trial in a lot of ways. Just procedurally, it makes it way more expensive. It makes it way more prone to appeals and way more prone to mistrials. And then also the way that sentencing goes, the way that we do sentencing for death penalty is totally fucked in this country. Okay. You can introduce anything at sentencing. I was working a case, and at sentencing, they brought in someone to testify that when the defendant was 13 in the Boy Scouts, he had pushed this other boy down a hill. That was just part of the sentencing testimony of saying why he was a bad person. Another one was
it's not. I thought it was just like impact statements from victims. It really can be anything.
No, it could be anything. There was a guy that showed up and he testified and he said, "I got mugged by two men in masks, and I think one of them was the defendant."
Okay,
that came in. All right. Yeah, and then what they do is they say they go to the jury and it's okay. You got to give us a unanimous decision of life in prison or death penalty.
Wait.
It's got to be unanimous.
The jury is the one that makes the decision as well on the sentencing, and this is after all the other statements.
Yeah.
Oh,
so they convict him, and then a jury has to decide to kill him. Yeah. And so they go, okay, it has to be unanimous. Unanimous of killing or unanimous of life in jail. And but what they don't tell them is that if everybody but one person votes to kill him, he gets life in jail. They intentionally, specifically do not tell juries that, so that if it's on that close thing, they'll still vote to kill him. Because juries think, if it's hung, it fucks everything up, even though that's not true. They kind of manipulate them into thinking that it has to be unanimous either way. So people don't want to go through the 12 Angry Men shit.
Sure. Well, that sounds like a not good process.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm coming from the process side of like, it's really costly. It's prone to a lot of issues, and there's already a lot of problems with this trial, or this case at least. The trial's going to be a nightmare too. So I think it's obviously for show, and I think it's probably a really bad move to be seeking the death penalty here. And I think you probably also saw they're seeking the death penalty in like any case they possibly can having to do with an illegal immigrant or something like that. They said like if there's an illegal immigrant that's charged with a crime and we can seek the death penalty, we will.
Okay, that's a little unhinged as well.
Which also, yeah, it's just like a huge amount of cost on the American people for.
I would say another thing that like these like unfortunately these are I guess like soy arguments that fellow conservatives used to make these arguments about how great or amazing America was. All of the videos involved of like immigrants being deported or whatever is some of the most disgusting shit that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I also, if the Civil War happens or whatever, like my first targets will be other Cubans, because historically Cubans are big on like, oh, people fleeing Cuba, you know, are great, they should come here, like we love them, but like shit on other immigrant groups, and that it's just it's unhinged and disgusting to me that people would celebrate stuff like that. Like it's absolutely insane to me. But geez, you know what I'm talking about? All the different videos.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was. I read. I've been reading some accounts from immigration attorneys about their clients. I think this one actually made it into an article where it was her client was. I believe she was either undocumented or she was waiting for an asylum hearing. She had a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. They took them through. They just picked them up. ICE did. Threw them into a cell, big quotation marks there. They gave them 1 cup of ramen to eat between the 3 of them. No diapers for the 1-year-old. I think there was a toilet, but there was no sink or anything to wash with. Didn't give them very much water, and it took them like 3 days before they actually processed them, and they were able to either get this attorney to come and represent her and get her out of there. And it's just like the most, you're right, like just the most nightmarish.
And you
like,
can't even make with conservatives anymore, as much as I'd like to, you know, with my Catholic Jesuit background and everything, but like I don't even touch the moral arguments because it's like so obviously morally fucking bankrupt. Like I can't even believe that without a second thought, people would support stuff like this, but yeah.
Well, I keep coming back to this kind of idea. People are just like really short-circuiting a lot of arguments where like, and I've seen this with some conservatives I know where like I will bring up like kind of a moral aspect of it or, you know, like I don't think Jesus would like this or something like that, right? And they stop themselves as quickly as possible from thinking about it and go, well, you know, we need to, or they start talking about huge concepts like jobs or the economy or just, you know, these like things that have nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Because it's like, if you told me that America was going to lose 10,000 jobs, but it means that 2 million people got housed, right? Oh, okay, yeah, that like makes sense, right? Like if you told me that like 1 million people were going to no longer be hungry, but America would lose 1,000 jobs, right? Like it's just kind of this thing where it's like, yeah, that's such an easy yes, right? Like, would you quit your job to save someone's life? And it's like, yeah, obviously I would. But I think that for a lot of these people, they're so stuck in this weird, like, I don't know, like they just think there's some existential threat happening in the economy prior to the tariffs. And then tariffs show up and they are an existential threat, and they're like, oh, well, you don't even realize how bad it really was. Or actually, there's these problems that supersede caring about human rights, and it's like I don't know, it's super hard for me to talk or relate to those people. I have to remove myself from those conversations.
It's pretty crazy, pretty unhinged, and it's like it doesn't fit with any of the, and I mean I've said this before, they don't actually care about any of this, but it doesn't fit with like just any of the conservative stuff that's been told over the years. Like, look how many people worship like Jordan Peterson and all of these archetypes of characters and how important all this fucking cringe shit was. And it's like, okay, well, like, what is the archetype of, you know, like a strong man? Like, is he evaluated based on like how many opponents he can fucking slaughter in the ring? Or is it like, how many people can this guy, you know, carry on his, like, what is the that stupid footprints thing? That, I don't think it comes from the Bible, but it's like a fucking poem. You know what I'm talking about? On the beach?
Oh, when he carries me. Yeah, I look back
why,
and you were
and
with me, Lord.
in the hardest times of my life, like there was one set of footprints, like, because I put you on my back. It's like, oh, but that's not actually us anymore. Now it's literally just like, get ours as much as possible, fuck everybody else, and if we've got to, you know, crack some skulls together, then it's just like, it's disgusting. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in a sorry, I'm trying to. It's fine. I'll talk about it. I try not to do too much personal stuff. I don't think this really is. I was at a Bible study where it was like Christian Muslim relations, like last month, and I thought it was going to be like, oh, like how can we, you know, be nice to like Muslims and Christians together and stuff. And I like quickly realized it was a class for white people over the age of 60 to learn how to not be racist to Muslims, because multiple times the priest who is running it, who's a friend of mine, had to go, remember the Good Samaritan, remember it. That's what we're here for. We're talking about that. We're not talking about why we don't like them. And it was, and these people, like, he was having to like drag them to just the most basic aspects of Christianity. And it was just like, it was really bizarre to see. It was like really hard for me to compute it, because it was just like, you guys really can't. They were like frothing at the mouth to talk about how Muslims are anti-Semitic, or about how actually Christianity is illegal in some of their countries. Right?
Yeah.
And it was like,
what's the turn the other cheek thing? Yeah, it's like,
yeah, and it reminded me of, there was a quote from the campaign where they were talking to some Southern preachers, and they said that like a lot of preachers are having trouble because these Trump voters are having, they would get upset about the Bible, where they would say, well, no, turning the other cheek is like pussy shit. Yeah, that's like pussy shit.
That's why for
why
a
would
while,
I do that?
And it didn't carry on to the mainstream, but it was on the back of the red pill stuff for a while. It's kind of funny. Fuentes pointed this out. It's very true. For a while, that Islam stuff was actually getting really popular among young men, because Islam and like Muhammad, these were like based, awesome figures, and like they weren't cucked and cringe like Jesus was. Like this is like a fucking warlord who like threw down and handled shit, and you know, you kill apostates and all this shit. And Christianity was like this weird cucked religion of like turn the other cheek and get like raped by immigrants or whatever. Like that's, I'm glad it, I guess it didn't take more a hold, but like Jesus, yeah.
Well, and I think there's something in there along the lines of like, I think like, and I have a lot of respect for Islam, and I know a lot of really intelligent Muslims, and I really like their views on a lot of things. And I think that those people that were latching onto it were latching onto like
the worst parts of
like,
it.
Yeah, but also just like a really like stereotypical idea of it. It's like if someone like, it's like someone joining Christianity because they really like the Book of Job, and they start going to a prosperity doctrine church, where it's like, well, this is what I want, right? Like that's how I felt like a lot of these new Islamic converts from the internet were being, where they're like, oh shit, like, you know, Muhammad just showed up and fucked everyone's shit up and made shit his and did what he wanted, and I want to do that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like that's a really weird take on it, to like say that's what this is about. And that's, most of the Muslims I know don't treat it that way, and actually have a lot of respect for people. And no, I don't really think it's about, you know, running a webcam service or owning, you know, casinos in Romania and stuff like that. Like I think it has a lot more to do with these other things that you think are cucked and stupid, but they don't want, you know, they just want the cool parts of it. But yeah, I mean, I kind of got off on a tangent there, sorry, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it is all like scary and fucked. But I think the one thing you expressed frustration the first time we talked about the judge not doing contempt, and they're not doing the things they're supposed to do, and it feels like we're kind of powerless here. And I thought a little about that, because I think I don't know for you, but I think for a lot of people, it feels a little surprising how fast and effective the Trump administration is. Like just how, like, it feels like a light switch was flipped and boom, 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 boom. He's like doing all of this insane shit. And it feels like everyone else is playing catch up. And I agree that it feels that way, but I think that like, whenever I look at it, I think that Donald Trump, MAGA, and a lot of conservatives have spent the 4 years under Biden setting a lot of this stuff up and prepping their people for it and getting them ready for it. And I think that the Democrats spent a lot of time kind of not either, whether it was in the spirit of bipartisanship or whatever other reason, norms, they didn't really prep their people on the
Well,
other side. I think there was a lot of warnings.
I
There
mean,
was a lot of warnings.
the Republicans prepped the Democrats too, right? And I think this happened for so much with the media, with the whole Trump derangement thing, right? That like, oh, well, wow, what was the thing I watched? Even Cenk did the thing against Francesca where he's like, Francesca, come on. Labor camps, you think they're going to be putting people in camps? Come on, this is why you're crazy. And it's like,
right.
Yeah, they spent all this time making everybody so afraid to criticize the Trump admin, and now we're here.
And they're reaping the rewards. And I think that, like, if I look back at the last couple of years with the Democrats, I think that I would agree with you. I think Joe Biden was probably the greatest president in living memory, as far as I can tell. I think that, but the issue is that kind of long-term approach for Democrats, I just never felt like that existed in the same way for the Republicans, where they're like, man, once we get back in power, we're fucking ready to go, right? And
yeah, but
and
again, it's the comparison between, like, have you ever played League of Legends or any team-based game online ever?
Yeah, way too long.
Yeah, it's
and I know the comparison you're about to make.
Yeah. So when you're set up in that type of environment, there's a second thing that I bring up too that I think a lot of people don't grab onto sometimes, is that, like, checks and balances don't exist to protect you against a dictator. Checks and balances are just a good way to govern, where democratically appointed power is like effectively allotted to different branches so that different people are represented. But, like, this is one of the criticisms I kind of had of people. I don't know if we talked about this or not, but, like, people are looking for the courts to save us. I just want the courts to do what they can. But, like, at the end of the day, the court can only do what a court can do. A court is not supposed to be there to stop the executive. Like, a TRO is an exceptional thing. It's not supposed to be the process. So if you're looking for a court to save you from a corrupt executive, that will never, ever be the case. If the executive has decided that they want to be corrupt, which we're in that point. We're past that point now, right? Because we just got a ruling saying they need to bring somebody back from El Salvador, and I think the government literally just said, no, we're not doing it. So now we're in, like, a weird world of, the courts can't save you.
Yeah. Right, but what I'm saying, though, is I think that, and I think you've said this, and I don't disagree with your take on it, of that the Democrats are interested in governing, and that's a kind of somewhat of a flaw for them, because it means that they're kind of hamstrung because they want good things to happen.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is also what I mean when I talk about this kind of, I see a failing of the long-term approach, because I'm sorry, as good as the Build Back Better and IRA and all that stuff was, what procedural things did Democrats focus on and pass? And I understand it was a divided Senate, all that stuff, it was difficult, but not just in the last administration. The Democrats owned the House and the Senate for 60 years, okay, during the 1900s. And they started relying on norms. They weren't updating procedures and codifying them, and they left these huge gaps open. Okay, this is a flaw that they had, and they should know it if they don't now. And
well, I mean, but when you say that, like, it's not like when you say majority, there's a difference between, like, 51, 49 versus, like, super majorities to actually start making huge updates to parliamentarian rules, or, like, passing laws to change these things, right? And a conservative might even argue with you where it's like, actually, Democrats did try to bully their way sometimes. I think it was it Harriet Reid or whatever, when they talked about nuclear option for federal judges, and look at what McConnell got you guys now on the Supreme Court shit because you guys tried to do that. So,
sure,
I think the problem is just they don't want to.
I'm talking further back than that, though.
Maybe.
To me, I'm saying that, like, seriously, like, the Democrats had opportunities to be forward-thinking, and the issue is, I think that I think you're right that they care about governing, but they care about governing in a material way for their constituents. And I think that Democrats really dropped the ball on maintaining and making sure that our government was protected from this kind of stuff. Like, there were steps they could have taken. I agree in the idea that if there's a bad faith actor, they're going to be bad faith, and it doesn't matter what laws you have. But codifying things and making where a lot of these norms can't just be gotten around if someone shows up and says, no, I'm not going to do it, I don't care. They had opportunities in the past, and I think they need to be looking for those opportunities in the future, because the Republicans, whenever they're looking forward, they're looking for those gaps, and that's what the last 4 years have been.
I don't know if I don't know if I agree with that. Or go ahead, finish.
No, I was just saying, because I think they saw them, made their plans, and they shot for them. And I think that with Democrats, I feel like they make a lot of really good moves with their political capital that feels great for people. But whenever I look at the moves that they're making for protecting the government and for protecting institutions and stuff, and maybe I have a bad perspective on this, it feels like they're lacking, and it feels like I would have rathered they shore up the government and make it so the government is safer from administrations like this than than pass the Build Back Better.
Yeah, so the reason why, yeah, I understand.
This is retrospective.
Sure.
This is retrospective. I can't sit here and say that like I was saying this back then.
Yeah,
Like,
the only issue I have is that like right now, it's not like Trump has come in and now like Republicans are taking advantage of a whole bunch of like things that Democrats haven't paid attention to or whatever. Like Trump has not done anything like wielding the powers of, you know, like a unified Congress to pass crazy laws. He's literally just coming in and ruling by pen, like as the president. Like that's it. Like what could have possibly changed? Like it's not like Democrats could go through every single law and be like, hey, fuck, what could possibly be abused by a dictator in the future or something? Like what could they have possibly changed to head off any of the unhinged actions so far?
I think that whenever I'm looking at it and I think about it, I think about kind of access to the levers of power. One, I think that there's a big part of it is around kind of the enforcement arms of our campaign and campaign finance laws. I think that a lot of those are seriously lacking, and Congress could have come in and done stuff like that. I recently got into a debate with my communist friends about Americans United. They got really mad at me because I don't have a problem with the decision. But if you read Americans United, you kind of see like, oh, actually, there's some flaws in a lot of the ways that these election finance and a lot of the
Wait, you're saying Americans United, is this a different case than Citizens United, or do you mean Citizens United?
I'm sorry, I meant Citizens United.
Oh, okay, go for it.
All right. And so, and I've done some work more locally regarding campaign finance stuff. And the way that this stuff is enforced, the way that it's that Congress kind of has not really looked at it, because everybody, you know, everybody in Congress wants those rules to be weaker. So looking at like the way that PACs and super PACs operate, the way that their tax, the way that they have like beneficial tax treatments on things, the way the reporting works, I think there's a lot of room there that would have helped in not only this election, but Donald Trump's first election. I think laws around the voting process by the Democrats, and this could be done a long time ago. It didn't have to be only whenever Donald Trump started fucking around. It could have been a long time ago. Around having a national day for voting, it's a federal holiday. These things, like, it's small stuff, and it's things that, like, I don't think. I think if Donald Trump was in power, it would stop him. But I think it's something that
it could help. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. There are things that could help.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know if anything having to do with like campaign finance would be small stuff, though. Like, I agree that there needs to be conversations around like the First Amendment in general, but Americans have a very hard time not just being like, I say free speech absolutists, but they're not even, but just around like whatever our current concept of free speech is. I agree that we probably need to change the way that stuff is financed and the way that money as speech works, but it's just, that's a really challenging conversation that no one is ready to have. Like the left, even the progressive left have like slogans, and then the right just doesn't give a fuck at all. And like, it's, yeah, I don't know. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. And this is like the biggest issue is that like, I think anything that I talk about is going to be so like, you're going to have such an academic foundation in it, or at least just give a shit such that you can't actually ask the American public to do it. And then every person involved with making those is going to inherently have an interest in not necessarily changing it the best way. So yeah, but this is the time now, whenever we have the anger, whenever we have the frustration with the system, that I hope the Democrats can capitalize on. I hope it's not Black Lives Matter. I hope it's not the, you know, Occupy Wall Street situation where we're going to get really mad and then show up and not get it done. And to me, yeah, let's get Trump and his cronies out in the street. That's fine with me. But on the backside of that, we can't say, wow, Donald Trump tore down this whole system. That sucks. We're all doing horribly. I guess we're going to be 50-50 in the Senate with the Republicans again. I want us to come in and say, wow, Trump really tore everything down. But just like we did with NAFTA, we're going to build it back even better. And we're going to make it so that it's not going to, that it's going to be what we really want and what this nation really needs.
Yeah, that's
so that in the future it's better.
That's the thing that's like the bright path. That's the threaded needle of the optimistic outcome is, for once in our lives, we can finally have conversations about democracy and what it means to be a democracy, because people's attention is going to be there after this administration, because all these things that we've taken for granted, like open markets or a president that's responsive to the Congress of the people, now we can finally talk about those things, but we have to utilize it to do something good with it. And it can't just be the empty and hollow sloganeering. It has to be challenging conversations around what certain freedoms look like and how the government should function. And I hope that those people emerge from this environment.
I think Yeah, I think you're right. And it reminds me of what I was feeling around whenever those USAID cuts were happening. It was funny because I think I don't agree with the Republicans on almost anything, but I think there was something in there that made me feel like, oh, I think I see a kernel of truth here, where I think that the U.S. gets a good amount of hate and criticism on the world stage from a lot of groups. Some of it deserved, some of it not. But I think it's pretty rare to see praise towards the United States. And whenever those USAID cuts came in, and I started seeing just how much of an impact we were having all over the world, it made me go, oh, whoa. Holy shit, we do a lot of good out there. And
yeah, I
wow,
think
why are we stopping to do this?
I think it depends on.
It made me go, oh, I want us to do that.
Yeah, I think it just depends on like what the. Or yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And I think that's how. I hope that's how it's going to be with democracy, where people go, oh shit, I didn't realize I was taking all of this for granted, and this is all really awesome. And I do want it back, and I do want to be passionate about it, and I want us to get those things back to where it was, and I'm happy to put in the work for us to get there. I hope that's what we see. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree, and I hope so. And I think there were times when people were positive. Like I remember reading multiple articles back in the day about how much like people across Africa actually love like George Bush because of like the insane amount of funding and stuff related to aid stuff. But we just, again, like everybody in the U.S. just like shits on us all the time. And the left has been guilty of this. It's one of the reasons why I said it's so hard to fight against Trump is because like, what are we saving when the left has also been saying like lobbyists and special interests run the government and the government hasn't been for the people in forever. And it's like, oh, well, fuck, I guess like if the Republicans want to tear it all down, I mean, who the fuck cares? You guys have been saying this shit sucks anyway, right? So what the fuck is the point?
Oh,
so, yeah, we need more like government defenders.
The silence from the left is deafening right now during this administration. Like, I'm not saying they're all like totally silent, but like, compared to how they were under the last administration, their silence is deafening.
Sure.
And I think that, part of that Citizens United argument I was in previously was like, they got really upset about, oh, well, corporations are people, blah, 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 all this stuff. And it was just like, everyone's just operating on memes and just like shit that they heard on a podcast of people collecting $80,000 a month in Patreon so that they can talk about communism for some fucking reason.
Yeah.
And that is really frustrating. I am like probably a year out. If they hear me on this stream, I'm definitely losing them. But I'm probably a year out from losing that group of friends because I'm so annoyingly pro-America there compared to everybody else.
Sure.
But yeah.
All right.
I appreciate you coming on. Again, appreciate you putting in a piece for the Pragmatic Papers. Everyone really appreciated it. Everybody in chat, go read the Pragmatic Papers. The new edition is live on the Reddit. Don't forget to bully Destiny into reading something, even if it's his own piece. It's okay with me. He can do that as long as he reads something from it. Bully him for it.
Okay. Maybe by next week I'll be reading it downstairs in my cute little studio. Okay.
Sounds good. All right. Have a good one, man.